our monthly lunch and learn. Today we have Rebecca Jaessings from Clara J's Tea Room. I'm honored that you named it after me. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Rebecca is the founder of Clara J's Tea Room, located in a historic home at 219 West Wayne Street in Uptown Maumee since 2005, where every day is a holiday. Rebecca was a senior grain buyer for the Andersons, where she was employed for 23 years, purchasing millions of bushels of grain, and was the voice of the radio and television daily market reports on WSPD. Zoom friends, we could meet them. At the Lutheran Hope Society, now Genacross, where for 12 years Rebecca was the regional property manager for senior housing with Lutheran Housing Services. As housing operations manager, 9 apartment complexes in Northern Ohio reported to her position. Go ahead and find a seat. I think Miss Lynn has a spot next to her there. As a housing operations manager, 9 apartment complexes in Northern Ohio reported to her position. Rebecca grew up on a dairy farm where the Lutheran village is today. Through her work with the community and women specifically, she realized there were few places that women could call their own. Prior to opening Clara J's Tea Room, she was a marketing director for Walker Funeral Homes. Rebecca resides in Maumee. She and her late husband, Marty Myers, are parents of 4 children who live coast to coast with their 8 grands. So let's welcome Rebecca and welcome.
Thank you, Clara.
Yes.
Yes, what a coincidence, huh? Clara and Clara.
Yeah.
I'm not Clara. Sometimes I get called Clara, but I'll answer to us all. The name is Rebecca. But anyway, it's a pleasure to be here with you all today. And I hope that you are staying cool. What a last few days, huh? Even today, it's really warm too. So, well, this is a nice place and great place to visit and do your thing here and all that sort of thing. So we're going to talk about tea today. And it's a lunch and learn. So I do hope that you'll learn some things about tea. I don't profess to be the know all end all to tea, that sort of thing. But having owned a tea room for 20 years, you get a lot of questions, and if you do your research, you learn a lot about tea. Okay, and for some it's tea, tay, cha, chai. Oh wow! So we call it tea. Okay, and the English call it tea. Okay, and so we're going to start with basically what is tea. Okay. Real tea, true tea, comes from a shrub called Camellia sinensis. Okay, Camellia sinensis. Now, some of you probably have camellia plants in your yard, but this is a little different hybrid of that. But that is what true tea comes from. Okay, and sometimes people get confused about herbals. Is that a tea? It is not. Herbals are not a tea. They can be utilized as a tea. And I'll just briefly talk about herbals. How many gardeners do we have in the room today? Quite a few. Basically, anything that is not poisonous that grows in your garden, you could make tea with. Okay. Camellia, roses. Yeah, have roses. The flowers, the leaves from the roses. I could go on and on, but you can do a little research on that too. But anything that's not poisonous, I mean, dandelions, for Christ's sake, I don't know about dandelion tea, but so we do eat dandelions, we eat the greens sometimes, and so the point being that herbal teas are not a true tea. They can be utilized as a tea, and you can drink them as a tea, find them relaxing, that sort of thing, but it is not a tea. Okay. And again, you can make it out of anything that's not poisonous. All right. If you like it, go for it. Okay. There's nothing to hold you back. Okay. So tea is again, what exactly is tea? It is a leaf from the Camellia sinensis plant. And one thing you'll find is that how do you find the best tea? Well, before I opened the tea room, I did a lot of research. And when I went to tea rooms, which I visited a lot of tea rooms, and I would ask the proprietor what kind of tea they served or what about tea, to get an idea. And invariably, the response was Harney and Sons, a privately owned company by the Harney family out of New York, and a percent of all their sales go to charity. And the thing about Harney and Sons, the leaves. Now, I'm not going to pass this around, but the leaves. I wish I could show you better. The leaves from Harney and Sons, or you can pass this around. Just look at it. They're big.
Oh, they're large ones.
And as you infuse them, they get bigger, okay? And that's where the flavor is. I'll tell you folks, I went, when I go out, which I go out and about a lot and have meals, but I tell you, I've pretty much stopped having tea, hot tea. Because the tea leaves, I asked one day, I got a tea bag at a very well-known restaurant. And I thought, I don't want to just check this out. I broke the tea bag open. And what do you think I found?
Oh, no.
Well, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad, but it was like little, like when you grind your pencils,
Shaving.
the shavings, that's all it was. That's all it was in this tea bag. And it's like, really? How are you gonna get any flavor out of that? Well, you don't. And that's sadly what happens a lot of times when people try tea. They have tea that's inferior, and I'm sure you all have friends that, oh no, I don't like tea. What don't you like about it? Well, I just don't like it because it doesn't have any flavor or whatever, And tea, folks, is a lot like wine. How many of you like white? How many of you like dry red wine? Do you like sweet wine? Do you like dry wine? Okay, tea is in the same kind of caliber, okay? It's different for everybody. And you have to find something you like. And somebody says to me, oh, I don't like tea. And my response is, well, you've never been suited to a tea. That's a common comment that we've all heard. Oh, you're not suited to a tea. Well, in this case, it is, you're not suited to a tea because you haven't had one yet that you like. When I first opened the tea room, again, 20 years ago, you go to the grocery store and literally the tea shelves were maybe this wide and this high, period, end of report. Okay, I'll challenge you. The next time you go to the grocery store, check out the tea aisle. It is gigundous. And it's like, oh, how do I know what to buy? Well, you don't really, unless you've tried them or maybe done a little research. But even doing research sometimes doesn't always tell you the story, And so I love Harney and Sons tea because the leaves are big and they have flavor. And then kind of on that note then too, tea. There's black tea, which everybody's familiar with, oolong tea, green tea, and white tea. Okay, those are the four main different kinds of tea I'm going to say. Green tea, when I first opened 20 years ago, green tea, what's that? It was not very commonplace. You never would get it in a restaurant or anything like that, or even a tea room hardly. They didn't have it. But today, green tea has risen up, I'm going to say to the top of the tea pile, because there are a lot of health benefits with green tea as well. And those of you who like tea have maybe already really explored that. So there are health benefits, particularly with green tea. And I'm not a nurse, I'm not a medical person. I can't tell you the medical benefits of tea, but everything I read says that tea is really good for you. And there are health benefits, particularly to green tea. Caffeine, there is caffeine in teas, whether it's any one of those flavors that I mentioned, there's some caffeine, okay? And but there's not as much caffeine in tea as there is in coffee. Okay, so if you have an aversion to caffeine, then I suggest you try green tea or just any tea. Now, I've heard the story that, if you want to reduce the caffeine in the tea, And I don't know, I don't know scientifically if this is true. Now, we may have some scientific people in here that could gauge this, I don't know. But the first story I heard was that, okay, if you brew your tea, steep your tea, and you throw out the first cup, then the second cup has less caffeine in it. I don't know. I'm hearing a lot of laughter, so I don't think to believe that story. I don't either. I really don't. But you know, yeah, I don't drink tea. I don't eat chocolate. I don't eat Coca-Cola after 6 o'clock at night.
Oh, yeah, you're right, yeah.
Because caffeine and I mean, I love caffeine to the extent that I drink it, I eat it, I love chocolate. But after 6 o'clock at night, it's gotta kind of limit myself, you know, because I don't want to be awake all night. Okay, because that's what caffeine will do to you, you know, and it makes a lot of people makes their heart flutter and all that sort of thing. I don't have that problem, but anyway, so the point being that there is caffeine in tea. And I don't know, unless you buy decaffeinated, there's really no way to get rid of caffeine in tea that I'm aware of, okay? Yes,
The fruit kind of tea that they make is caffeine free.
it could be,
Oh, well, everything I've checked,
it is,
peach, apple,
Yeah.
any strawberry,
right,
they're all caffeine free.
and that's because they're made from fruit,
Right.
and there's not caffeine in fruit, okay? So again, that goes back to like your garden, you can make tea with things that in your garden that I'm sure they don't have caffeine in them. So same thing with fruit doesn't have caffeine. And so again, be creative, you know, you got nothing to lose to try. Other than you don't like it, then you throw it away, you know, that's no big deal. But anyway, so again, the teas that we talked about, the black tea, the green tea, the oolong, and the other, they're all from the same leaf. It's all in the way they're processed. Now, do any of you ever get down to Charleston, South Carolina? Yeah. In Charleston, there is a tea plantation. Really the one and only in the United States, okay? I'm sure that there are others around. But the tea plantation in Charleston, it's now owned by Bigelow. It used to be owned by a family. And the thing about tea, like wine, you know, you go out to the lake and you can get all kinds of wine. There's kinds of wineries out there. With tea is very subject to altitude, the condition of the ground, and the atmosphere. Okay. And so you can't grow tea every place. And in the South, in Charleston, for example, you've got the humidity and you know those kinds of things. And it's a wonderful visit to go to the Charleston Tea Plantation. Okay. You can go there because, well, it's open. I mean, they have a wonderful gift shop and don't spend too much time in the gift shop. Need a refresh on your wallet. But it's they have fields of tea plants that you can walk. And they have harvesters, they look like combines that they actually harvest the tea leaves with. And it's just an interesting place, okay? And it's a beautiful drive to get out to the plantation as well. So I know a lot of people, you know, go south and make that one of your stops, okay? And I'm open to questions. If you have any questions while I'm talking, don't feel free, okay? So tea is the most consumed beverage next to water in the world. Okay, in the world, okay? And how did we get tea in America? Well, the Dutch, first of all, were involved in China and as were the British in India and that. And the British did when they owned India, if you will, there was lots of tea there at that time, and then in China as well. And so then, of course, it came to England, and you all know what happened with the Boston Tea Party. We don't go there, but that's basically tea got to America kind of around that time. So that late 1700s, okay, and but tea was very expensive. Think about the boats that had to get it from China or Japan, wherever, to here, and then the processing and that sort of thing. But again, the processing of tea leaves determines then what kind of tea it's going to be. And there's, in Charleston, again, you can watch it process it. And it depends on if it's processed, like they roll the leaves and then they dry them, or what they do with the leaves, that makes a different kind of tea. Okay, and then when they put flavorings on it, then that's another whole process, you know, we won't go into that today, but it's just interesting, the whole, it doesn't just happen, you know, by going and picking the leaf. And the story goes that back in the, way back, thousand years ago, that a Chinese, I don't know if it's a king or whatever, but somebody, some monkey nut, okay, was sitting under a tree and a leaf fell in his cup, okay? And it's like, oh, this is good. So that really kind of got the tea thing going, okay? Because before that, nobody really knew about tea. And after that scenario, which I can believe that of course, there's nothing to really document it. But I will say that I believe that someone back in the day that happened, and then it was a discovery process, you know? And so anyway, that's the story as to the first finding, if you will, of tea. And then, of course, the processing, I mean, I can't imagine how that would have taken off back in the day, you know, in the year 1200. I don't know how they really done that, but that's neither here nor there, you know. So anyway, we talked about the Camellia sinensis, and primarily tea is grown in China, Japan, India, Sri Lanka, Taiwan, Cambodia, Vietnam, Africa, and Argentina. And there's a tea that comes out of Africa. It's a red tea, and it's rooibos. It's Rooibos, and it's pronounced rooibos. Okay, and it comes out of Africa, and it is a caffeine-free tea for the most part. Okay, and that's something that's been kind of new to the stores, if you will. And you can't always find it, but it's a red tea, and it's called rooibos. And we talked about the main categories. And again, going down to the leaves, the oxidation of the leaf is what makes the tea. Okay, now this is your hot water here, so feel free to put your tea bag in there. And I did not look from the tea room what all kinds of tea it was sent. This is an organic black, okay? And if you want to trade with somebody I don't know that they're all organic black. I did bring some sachets, some honey, supreme ingredient honey sachet. This is green tea. And if anybody would like to try this, you're welcome, okay? Just read your own ever. All right. Please sit it. Let's look at that. Sorry, here. Sorry, we have that. Yeah, back, yeah, I got it back. Perfect.
Do you think it's better to do that? You think they have that?
I have two left. And I'm sure, okay, where's the sanitary? Yeah. And that's the thing I got down and today.
And on the. Do you want to use this one? Sure. Okay. And
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, folks, let's talk about how to prepare a proper cup of tea. The first thing is you want good water, okay? A lot of us have well water and you got a lot of minerals and stuff in it and that's okay. But it could taint the taste of your tea, okay? So if you have something that, purifies your water a little bit, or you could use bottled water or whatever, and I'm not saying you have to do that, okay? You do what's convenient. But you just understand that the water you use will change the level of the taste of your tea, okay? And the best method of making tea is to boil water on the stove or in the microwave. I will tell you, I cheat, I do it in the microwave. 3 minutes for a cup of water. And then I put the tea bag in, or I pour the loose tea in, and I steep it. I typically steep mine for 3 minutes. And again, how long do you steep it? Well, it depends on you as an individual. Because the longer you steep tea, the tannins in it become bitter. All right. So I recommend 3 minutes at most. And then sometimes you'll say, or see that green teas or white teas, you don't need to steep that long. And then I read something the other day, steep it for 10 minutes. It's like, I don't think so. But, I was just reading somebody's commentary on it, so again, you decide how long you want to steep it. And the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, that the longer you steep it, it doesn't mean that you get more tea out of the tea bag necessarily. You do, but it changes the taste of the tea. Just know that, okay? So I do 1 teaspoon. And I don't measure it religiously, but I take a teaspoon and if I use loose tea typically, I don't use tea bags because again, loose tea tea needs to move around, okay? The leaves need to move around when you're making it. And think about a tea bag or a sachet. They're not going anywhere. They're there, okay? And the more the leaf moves around, the more flavor you get from the tea. Okay, so I use loose tea. And then I have a little strainer beside my, stove that I just strain it out as when I'm done timing it. And I do use a timer because, we all get distracted and then it's like, oh, geez, it's been in there. How long has it been in there? And then it's like, oh, okay, I'll try it. And you may like it and you may say, oh, or throw it away. But anyway, it's a matter of taste as well, okay? So that's the thing about tea, again, it's quite subjective as to how it tastes to you or your friend or whatever, okay? A good rule of thumb is 1 teaspoon per cup of water, okay? Now, a cup of water.
Yeah.
Is this a cup? What is a cup? A
8
cup is 8 ounces, right? We all know that, don't we? A lot of people don't know that a cup is 8 ounces, okay? So I tell people the first thing to do is measure whatever you're gonna put your water in, okay? So that you have 8 ounces, or if you got 4 ounces, then you put half of the tea in that you normally would. But I do use, you're gonna love this. I use a measuring cup when I'm heating my water in the microwave. So I put a cup of water in my measuring cup, put it in the microwave for 3 minutes. And then I take it out and I put my teaspoon of tea in there. Now, there's some times where it's like, oh, I'm going to put a little more tea in because I like it a little stronger. Okay. So if you want it stronger, don't steep it longer. You put more tea in it. Okay. And don't steep it longer. You put more tea in it. All right. So instead of 1 teaspoon, put a teaspoon and a half, or maybe even 2. Depends on how strong you want it. That's the kicker as it comes to the tea. Yes, ma'am.
Does that apply when you're using a tea bag? If you want it stronger, use big tea bags?
I do. Yes, if I want it stronger, I use 2 tea bags. Now, and I will tell you, you're gonna love this. I reuse a tea bag. And I do reuse loose tea as well. But when I reuse it, I only put in half as much water. Okay, because you've already used a lot of the flavor and the whatever from the tea. So you put in more water and am I being a cheapskate? Yeah, I mean, what you, anyway, yes.
Where do you find loose, I can't find loose tea in the grocery store.
No. Now, there was a tea shop here kind of on the north end of Bowling Green. I don't know if it's still there now. There's one out by the, as I went out to the golf course, there used to be a shop out there. There's Clara Jace, I will push Clara Jace in Maumee. You all go through Maumee at times. Clara Jace has, I'm not gonna say 100 varieties of tea, but she has, and I used to carry at least 25, 30 different kinds of tea, and it's all loose tea. Okay, when you go to Clara Jace, any tea that's made, it's made from loose tea. Okay, and they use it, basically a teaspoon per cup of water. Yes, ma'am.
Years ago, like we're talking 1970-ish or something.
Okay.
My husband and I liked Formosa oolong tea, and this is in Flagstaff, Arizona. The local grocery store, I mean, it only comes to loose tea as far as I know then. And I think it was Bigelow brand carrying it. I mean, we like, and then they discontinued it. I hadn't tasted it for a long time, but when I retired from the phone company in Iowa, and it's like, it included 2 years of school, and I took 2 years in the ed tech department for fun, and had a partner for projects in a couple of different states, and she was from Taiwan. And when I told her that we liked Formosa oolong tea, I mean, years ago, right? Oh, her eyes lit because Formosa is Taiwan, right?
Right.
I mean, it makes sense. But I had to, and I wondered if it tasted like I remembered. And then I happened in it was like a place in Cedar Falls. I went to open the tea cellar, and they had Formosa oolong tea. I mean, the first time I got, okay, and they sold it. But when I moved here a year and a half ago, I mean, I didn't go. I found it online.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
and it was like a third to half as the expense. I mean, the first time I discount the first order from this company. But if you're interested, I can tell you where to order it. I mean, it comes in a big bag, and I just put it in the one from, but it has. It's loose tea, and then what I got online here has bigger leaves, and I think how much like your teaspoon is going to be more or less tea depending on the size of
the leaves. That's right. And that's pretty subjective. And you're right, depending upon the size of the leaves, but again, you try it and you say, okay, we'll start out with a teaspoon, and if that doesn't meet your satisfaction, then you add more, and yes, you can order anything online. We all know that. But I will also tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that a friend of mine, and I don't always tell people this, but we got all these farmers markets. And this friend of mine who has some health issues, allergies, whatever, she bought some tea at a farmer's market, and she broke out in hives, and she had some real health ramifications from that. And the problem is that you don't know what's in the tea. You don't know what anybody's added to it or not. So I'm just saying that when you buy tea off the street or even online, you don't always know what you're going to get. And it's important that you buy from someone that is reputable and is going to sell you what you think what you really want. Okay. And I only mention that because, again, at farmers markets, it's not that I'm farmers markets, please don't misunderstand, but you just don't always know what you're getting. Okay. So anyway, so back to tea then. Black tea, they say 5 to 6 minutes. I still do 3 minutes personally, because that's what I like. Okay. But if you like it 3 to 5 minutes, then go for it. Or 5 to 6 minutes, whatever. It's not going to matter. I will tell you that when you do herbals, I find that I need to steep herbals longer because they just don't have the flavor that I'm expecting if I only do it for 3 minutes. And again, because herbals don't have caffeine and they don't have the tannins that regular tea has, it's not gonna change, the flavor's not gonna go bad because you steeped it for 6 or 7 minutes, okay? So, and they often say again, 1 to 2 minutes, but I tell people, you know what, do what works for you. Do what works for you, and you can try different things, but do what works for you. And you might share with your friend, oh, I found this and I really liked it, I did it for 5 minutes, and fine. Your friend may say, oh, yuck, I don't like that, but you never know, yes. ma'am.
Since herbal tea is not made from tea,
Right,
do you think it has the same medicinal benefits as the regular tea?
and I do not believe that it does. Now, again, I'm not a medical person, and I really can't speak to that, but I would say probably not. Unless you've done some research and there are some things that we eat that are good for us medicinally, or health wise. Okay, so if you know and have read something about a vegetable or a fruit that is good and it has some health benefits, try it. You got nothing to lose. That's how I look at it anyway. And I'm going to talk about tea etiquette. I know how many of you, let me ask, most of you been to a tea room? Or you go to tea down here at the historical center, or maybe you've been to Clara Jae's, I hope. You're all welcome to go to Clara Jae's. But, the whole thing about tea etiquette, okay? I think those of us at our age, and I'm not bemoaning the fact that, we are the age we are, because we are what we are, but we look around sometimes and it's like, really? Why do you think that's okay? And, again, I put down placemats and napkins because young people come to the tea room, and I teach a manners class at the tea room. And they'll say, don't mind if I pick this up. What is this? What am I supposed to do with this? Well, you can put it on your lap. When you spill something, you can wipe it up. Wipe your mouth, So I think part of our generation, we need to take time to talk about these things, or maybe not even talk about it, but like when you have family over, get out the good china, get out the paper, not paper, get out the napkins, get out the placemats, get out the pretty linens that you got stashed in your cupboard, because I know you got them stashed in your cupboard. And get them out and use them, because you know what? The generations behind us are not going to have a clue about what is proper, and not even so much what is proper, but what is kosher, if you will, and what is appropriate. And so anyway, that's, again, I will challenge all of you to, and of course, having been at the tea room, ladies would come in and say, I got some china I want to give you. Do you mind? No. Tell me about it. Well, I know all your china here today has a story. My kids don't want it. They don't know what to do with it. It's like, so we're gonna throw out all the good stuff? Well, again, I challenge you, and with summer, we get together as families and this and that, get out the linens, and you don't have to iron them every time you use them. I'll give you a break on that. So anyway, so this is kind of maybe goofy that we talk about tea etiquette, but it applies to other things as well. Okay, just think of etiquette in our day-to-day lives. Please, the special words, please, thank you, excuse me, those are things that we all need to, and I'm sure we do, but we need to teach other people. Okay, you don't swirl tea in your teacup like you do a glass of wine. Yeah, don't want to do that. And if you're at an event, you try a little bit of everything. And I know we all have grandkids that say, oh no, I don't want to try that. I don't think I'll like it. Try a little bit. Just try a little bit, And if you have a scone, which I love scones, you spread the jam first with jam and then with cream. And more often than not, if you go to a tea room, you get jam, you get Devonshire cream, you get lemon curd, and you spread it first with the jam, okay? And you can cut it, break it up, whatever. And when you're drinking your cup of tea, no. No pinky finger.
Somebody smacked me.
Here goes, he'll get smacked.
How did that start? The cookie finger.
You see it a lot, and I would never walk up to anybody and say no pinky finger, but if I'm doing a manners class, and I'll tell you folks, no pinky finger, okay? You put your fingers around the cup and the handle, okay? And you don't jiggle the tea bag by the string. Now, I wasn't watching it when you guys were doing this tea bag, but you don't jiggle the. You don't do this, okay? And then the break, kind of home, no, but when you're out in a tea room or, with friends, nah, that's cool, okay. And then the spoon goes on the saucer, okay? When you're done doing whatever you're doing. And a lot of times I get the question, what about milk versus cream? Cream, don't use cream. Because cream, you can't taste the tea because the cream overpowers the taste of the tea, okay? So you use milk. And I'm not gonna tell you to use 2% or whatever, just use milk. Okay, that way, it's poured in, obviously after the tea is in your cup, then you pour the tea in. And then sometimes people use lemon. I personally don't use lemon, but that would be put in last. You can squeeze a lemon or just drop it in. But don't take the lemon out once you put it in, okay? That's another one of those things, you just leave the lemon in there to float around and do its thing until you're done. But then you don't take a spoon to press the lemon in the teacup. Now, we are gonna have a test on this. Yes,
I thought it was English style that you put the milk in the cup first and then you pour the tea on it.
well, that might have been, and maybe that's the style, but that's not what you wanna do. Because again, the milk in it or the cream overshadows the milk.
Milk.
Yeah, but milk, so I would put it in afterwards.
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
You said not to, put the tea bag on the spoon and then the
Wrap it
prep.
around, yeah.
How do you get the excess water out?
You just don't, you just hold it there and.
Not like today, Or pretty.
Watch it, watch it.
I know. Anyway, it's just one.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you see, like a plastic. I don't know what it is, but it's where the tea bag fits in and you squeeze it.
Yeah,
And I've seen those.
there's numerous things today, but again, it depends. I'll just say, folks, depends on who you're with. If you wanna impress them, then, do some of that kind of thing. You just send the tea bag, the reality is that there's not gonna be a ton of tea left in the tea bag when you're done steeping it. And you just set it on the side of your cup beside on your saucer there, and iced teaspoons. Now, summertime iced teaspoons, they're set on the outer, on your place setting, they're set on the outer side of that because if you're having iced tea, that'd be the first thing you pick up, okay? And again, that's one of those things that setting a table, how many of us really set a table? And again, when you have family over, it's nice thing to do. And the teacup, you set the handle at 4 o'clock. You got a question?
No, I was gonna make a comment about squeezing the bag.
Yeah,
The directions on the front boxes say do not squeeze the bag.
oh,
3 o'clock.
did you hear that? She's saying that on some boxes, it says, do not squeeze the tea bag. I wonder why that is.
Drop down.
Huh?
Makes it stronger, maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe it has step in when it's tea longer and the tannins come out.
That's interesting. I've not seen that. Don't squeeze the tea bag. All right, folks, so don't squeeze the tea bag. Y'all got them?
Squeeze the jar.
And squeeze it in.
Well, now, I can answer, yes,
Also with pinky,
yeah,
okay, I do stick my finger out because I had hand surgery. And I can't move.
it's good. There's not an issue. But I give you a pass on that, okay?
And the water, be sure to start with cold water because hot water has set in the hot water heater and the pipes longer.
Yeah.
So even though you're gonna heat it up, you start with the cold. But in the 1990s, I rented rooms to students in Cedar Falls. There were a lot of students that couldn't find housing. There was a shortage, and I had a big house and rented it. And a student from France and one from Eritrea. They both made tea. They both used pretty good sized cups or glass cups.
Uh-huh,
And so, but they used a bottled water
okay.
without the minerals because it's not really, looked really pretty, but it wasn't so much for the flavor that I wanted. They just wanted it to look clear.
They wanted it to be clear.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, you know, again, Europeans, they go about things differently. And that's not to say it's right or wrong or anything like that, but, you know, again, the company you keep sometimes determines, your activity, we'll say. Okay. Okay, we talked about brewing a perfect cup of tea. All right, now that it's summertime, we all like iced tea, don't we?
Yeah.
So when you make iced tea, you have to use twice as much tea because you're gonna dilute it with ice, okay? So, again, I make a small pot of like 8 ounces, well, no, more like 16 ounces. When I make iced tea, I'm gonna make it for a couple days. And so I might put 8 or 10 tea bags in, or if I'm using loose tea, I'll put probably 6 or 7 teaspoons of tea in it. And then it's gonna be okay. But again, how strong do you like it? You know, that's the bottom line, is how strong do you like it? And 4 teaspoons. What I've discovered is 4 teaspoons per cup of water, 4 teaspoons of tea to a cup of water, because then again, you're gonna dilute it. All right, but again, it depends on what you like and how you like it. The other thing I will say is that when you don't use a metal teapot to brew your tea or to steep your tea, metal has a way of infiltrating the water. And when you make a pot of tea, you want to use something that's china or something that's glass, because it doesn't absorb any of the metal. Okay. I know we probably all have little metal teapots at home. I got one right now that it's like, what am I doing with that? I don't use it, but somebody gave it to me, you know, and it's a cute little teapot, but I don't use it for the very reason we're talking about. So you have china, get it out, use it, and make your tea in that, okay? Couple other things I wanted to just mention is, you know, the legend has it that, 2000 BC is when the empress, or the emperor, had the leaf drop in his, cup. Well, then you didn't hear much about anything until really, the English, Anna, who was the 7th Duchess of, Bedford, 1783 to 1857. She is the one who really started the whole thing about tea parties. I shouldn't even call it a party, but tea get-togethers, okay? Afternoon tea. Now think about it, folks. I don't know about you, but I eat breakfast in the morning when I get up. I have lunch, 12ish, 1ish, something like that. And I eat dinner around 5 o'clock. Back in the day, think about it, history, that in England particularly, or in other countries too, you maybe had breakfast, you maybe had lunch, but you didn't eat dinner until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. It was always late by our standards, but maybe some of you eat late too. But anyway, the point here being is that having come to England from Portugal, she could not wait until 9 o'clock to eat. And so she invited her friends to come, like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and she fixed this little tea, that she didn't probably call it tea at the time, but an afternoon soiree, we'll say, for her girlfriends, for her lady friends. And so that got her then to supper, which was not until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So that's kind of how tea really took off with her. And then, the hierarchy of England, then it filtered down to others. And now there's high tea and low tea. What do you know about high tea and low tea? High tea typically, well, high tea is typically a full meal, okay? It not always has meat, but it has a full meal, let's just say. We're not talking about potatoes and vegetables necessarily, but we're talking about a more substantial meal, okay? And low tea is just like maybe a sandwich or a scone or something like that. And then I read fairly recently that, well, back in the day, high tea, when people had high tea, they used to sit on, like a lot of times you go into a restaurant, bar, grill, whatever, and they have these high tables, okay?
Oh.
And then we don't sit on low tables, but think about this. So high tea was served on a higher table, and low tea was served on anyway, that's it. High tea, low tea, okay? Believe it if you will, don't have to, but anyway. The main menu was at 9 o'clock though at night. And when they did the 9 o'clock meal, they sat on high tables, okay? And so anyway, that's a little thing about high tea and low tea. And at Clara J's, I decided I wasn't going to call it high tea, okay? And I'll share something with you folks that, we live in I love where we live. I love the area and that, but high tea sounds kind of hoity-toity. And it's like, I want people to come and enjoy it for what it is, and I'm not going to call it high tea. So I called it proper tea. It is a high tea, but it's just a different vernacular than high tea, and it sounds more welcoming to everybody. And so proper tea is the same as a high tea. And those of you who have not been to a high tea, and I'll just reference again Clara J's. When I was organizing what I was going to do there, I wanted to use linens, I wanted to use fine china that made it a tea room, okay? And never did, never will, I don't think, use plastic or paper. And then at the same time, okay, what are we going to serve this high tea on? So I found these things at Oneida. Anyway, doesn't matter. There are 3-tier silver trays. And so the top tray has the savories. The middle tray has the sandwiches, and the bottom tray has the sweets. And so you start at the top and you work your way down. Now I tell people you don't have to start at the top. You can start at the sweets if you want. Nobody's gonna holler at you, but that's how it's typically when you go to a nice tea room, that you'll find that kind of thing. That the savories, English call them savories. They don't call them appetizers. We call them appetizers, but they are savories, okay? And it's kind of the same thing as an appetizer. But anyway, that's part of the program. And in your little envelope there, there's a menu. They just changed the menu, and I had some bags that had the menu from last season. At Clara J's, they changed the menu quarterly. Right, so you have a spring menu, a summer menu, a fall menu, and a winter menu. And then, of course, at holidays, they change it up depending upon what, like Mother's Day and that kind of thing. They changed the menu. And so anyway, high tea is available by reservation, and typically any place you go to a tea room for a high tea, you want to call ahead. because it takes a lot of prep to do that whole meal, if you will, okay? And typically, again, one other thing of interest is that when I opened a tea room 20 years ago, nobody, I mean, literally, nobody ever came in and said, oh, I'm a vegetarian or I can't do this. I mean, literally, I never heard that until probably about 8 or 10 years ago. And now it's very commonplace. And I know there may be people in here that have some dietary restrictions, and if you do, let people know. And there's nothing worse. This has happened when you sit down this wonderful meal in front of somebody. And I say, well, I can't eat this, I can't eat this, I can't eat this. You owe it to yourself and the staff to let them know that you have some dietary restrictions, and they'll make adjustments. And folks, today you go out and you can get gluten-free, you can get whatever, wherever you are typically, which is a good thing, so that people's needs are met, okay? Now, I could go on, it's already been 50 minutes. Happy to answer any questions. You have any comments, anything? One last thing I will say is that you think about back in the day, how did women get together? They couldn't always have people into their house. But think about the well, okay? In Bible times, ladies went to the well. And that's where they met and communicated with other people. Obviously, they connected with people and have a quiet soiree with you and talk about whatever that you maybe can't talk about other places or in front of people. But having tea is like the well. Okay. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Do people ever read tea leaves like they used to?
There are some people that do read tea leaves. Now, I can't tell you the names of any because I've been out on the loop here now for a couple of years in terms of that. But I think there's a place as you go up 25. Like in spas and places like that do tea leaf reading. Now, I don't know anything about tea leaf reading, but it would be a fun thing to do with friends too, or have a party and have somebody come in and read your tea leaves or whatever.
Rebecca, I have a
Yes.
question on the Zoom.
Yes,
She said, when you say to brew tea leaves loose, do you mean to put them in a tea filter bowl for brewing?
tea filtered bowl for brewing. No,
And then
yeah.
you strain it out
And then you
after.
strain it out. Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I have a little strainer that you can use any kind of a strainer. You can use it, if you have coffee, the coffee thing that you put the coffee in, coffee filter thing. You can do that. So it's the same thing, you just want to get the leaves so that you're not. Now, let's face it though, folks, that if you drink a tea leaf, it's not going to kill you. It's okay, So anyway, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Let's see, with the property, is there, do you have any sort of, dress etiquette?
I appreciate you asking that. There is no dress code, but I'll tell you what, when people ask me that question, I'll say, don't wear blue jeans and a t-shirt. Where can you go and get dressed up anymore, folks? I mean, even today, I stopped someplace on my way in today. I didn't have my hat on. And people make some comments. And I said, I'm going to do a tea talk down at the community center. And it's like, oh, okay. But again, going to tea is an opportunity to get dressed up. And you're not going to feel out of place. And you can wear the fanciest hat, or you can wear a suit and a bow tie, whatever. And you know what, again, it's an opportunity for those of us who have family that just, maybe they don't have that kind of apparel, but maybe they do and they don't have a place to wear it, and say, let's get dressed up. Let's go have a tea party, or come to my house and get dressed up. Get dressed up. Let's have fun. And, again, it's an opportunity to sort of pass the baton to those who've not experienced that kind of thing.
But when you schedule, maybe like,
Pardon me?
do you, suggest or do you say, something, anything about, apparel?
No,
I didn't think so,
No.
but anyway, because I know you
No.
probably get whatever.
Yeah.
So,
and you want people, as a proprietor, you want people to feel comfortable coming. And if they feel like they have to get dressed up and they maybe don't have that kind of clothes, and maybe what you think is dressed up and I think is dressed up is two totally different things. Some people dressing up as blue jeans and again, a shirt, anyway, different strokes for different folks, yes.
I would just like to say I've been there this year and the food was absolutely delicious. And I would also like to ask, do they have gift certificates at Clara J?
Well, they do, thank you. Yes. Yes, they have good gift certificate can be used at Clara James, obviously. They see, well, the hours are 10 to 3, okay? So you can go in 10 o'clock, pick up a gift certificate, get some tea or whatever. And then seating for the meals, for proper tea is at either 11 or at 1:30. But you can also go in and have lunch at other times. So if you want to have lunch, it's that window, but it doesn't have to be 1 or 11 or 1:30. We try to restrict the proper tea to those hours, either 11 or at 1:30. And for proper tea, you do need to have a reservation, and they will ask for a credit card confirmation, because again, it's a lot of work putting all the food together. And you want to make sure that people come. Gretchen was a chef, and she started out at Owens Community College in the culinary department. And then I learned of her, and she came to work at the tea room as the kitchen manager, if you will. And where was I going with this? That again, the menu changes periodically. Lunches, where I was going with this is they're doing a lot of catering, and certainly during COVID, they did a lot of carry out. And still do carry out. And what I found a lot of times ladies have a friend who's maybe not able to get out, and they'll come and pick up a lunch and take it to the friend, because it's a lot like what you had today, it's kind of special. And you can take it in a styrofoam box and put it on a pretty plate, and it looks really nice, and it looks more appetizing even, So carry out and that kind of thing too. Yeah, and everything there is homemade, guys. Everything, including out of a can. Never have,
Hour for a large group.
Yes, they do evening hours, they do Sundays, they do, whatever they can accommodate, put it that way, okay? And there's sometimes when things can't be accommodated for obvious reasons, you gotta have staff and that sort of thing. Yes,
So the lunches, you just can drop in. You
can-
have to have a reservation.
you can drop in for the lunches, but I'll tell you what, they've been busy. I called on shakes here for everybody, and then you're gonna get a table, yeah. So, yes,
I was curious about where the name Clara J's come, and I
Oh.
found the answer on the back of the menu. So, but I was thinking the people online might be curious, and if you want to just say, hey, come and look at the back of the menu to explain, that's okay. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like they
okay.
might-
Well, Clara was my aunt, and Clara was a woman way ahead of her time, okay? She went to Baldwin Wallace College in the 1920s. I have no idea, folks, how she got there. And you know what? That's one of those things as a kid. It's like, well, gee, Aunt Clara, how'd you get there? I don't know. My family did have a car early on. We had relatives who owned the Ford, the Lesh Motor Company in Maumee, so we always drove Fords. And possibly had a Ford. And then when she came back to Toledo, she worked for well-to-do families and did a lot of private catering and events like that. And Aunt Clara and Uncle Frank lived in over in Stony Ridge. And anytime we went to Aunt Clara's, you know, again, being the culinary person that she was, that's the first time I ever had cream cheese. You'll love this. She made cream cheese in little balls and put it in green jello.
Oh,
I mean, you know, but I remember because that was the first time we ever had cream cheese. And so again, when we go to Aunt Clara's, we ate different than we did at home. I mean, my mom had 6 kids. We lived on the farm. We raised Guernsey cows and you know, all that. And my mom fixed great meals, but there was no cream cheese or cream cheese. I can tell you that, you know. And then Aunt Clara and Uncle Frank did not have children. And so we became their kind of their surrogate kids, if you will. We loved going to Aunt Clara's. And you know, I could go on and on, but Aunt Clara, and then she owned, maybe some of you might remember, there was a Stuckey's restaurant on Reynolds Road. She owned Stuckey's restaurant. She started it. I mean, it's like, how the heck? She and Uncle Frank would go to Florida. And on the back, this had been in the 50s and the 40s and the 50s. She and Uncle Frank would go to Florida and Stuckey's was on the way. That's sort of like today. What do you know, you see Bob Evans all along the way or whatever. Stuckey's. And she came home and I mean, again, I have no idea how it gives me goosebumps, how she got involved in this, but she became the owner, the franchisee of Stuckey's restaurant on Reynolds Road, Reynolds and Ryan. That was our family property there. And and today it's not a restaurant anymore, it's something else, some other business is there. Then there was a Franklin ice cream shop there for a while, and anyway, so she opened this franchise and she hired this couple, Mr. and Mrs. Portis from Virginia. And so they kind of had the southern twang about them. And of course, Stuckey's, if you don't know, it's all about pecans.
Yeah.
Okay, pecan this, pecan that, you know, and then and they served little sandwiches and that kind of thing. But Aunt Clara opened this franchise then, and she had it for probably about maybe 10 years. And then she sold it, and she at that point she would have been probably young actually. But she was an entrepreneur, you know, and so anyway, that's a story about Aunt Clara. Yeah. Clara Jaessing Keller, and I use my maiden name just because, but not that that's neither here nor there. But anyway, so well, you've been a great audience. Thank you for being here today, and so we're hoping to see you someplace, somewhere, you know.